Chapter 26 The Metamorphosis of Medusa.
Not many people are brave enough to find the sacred inner temple,
said this mysterious woman's voice. Again it felt as if my bones had turned to stone, and so with every step I began to move even more slow. I cannot see you, but I'll warn you if you attack. My body is filled with accursed poison, and it spreads through my legs to my heart, my head, and through my back.
Sounds delicious. I love a little snack. What did you get bit by, if you don't mind that I ask?
She said. There in the distance, I saw two amphibian eyes emerge. I was shocked when I saw her appearance seemed to be flowing on top of this cavernous gorge. Who are you?
A name's just a name. I'm more of a trickster than that. The Greeks called me Medusa, but it's nice to have you back,
she said. There was a mysterious green radiance within her, and at first it only came through her eyes. Now it began to spread through her body and many limbs which could no longer hide. With many legs and arms, she traversed across the ceiling, and there I saw that this unknowable woman had hair filled with lively sea serpents.
Welcome, welcome. It's been so long. Don't be afraid, darling. A curse only feels heavy until its blessing comes along, said
Medusa. But you don't know what's wrong.
Nothing's wrong. It's all gone right. If you've been thrown to the bottom, then you're bound to rise,
she said. But a cruel king sealed my fate. He sentenced me to extreme solitary instead of a sentence to die.
Not quite. It is written in your destiny that your spirit soul will rise, she said.
At once that green light expanded, and I felt it beating like a pounding heart. At once the entire cavern lit up, and now the mossy plants all around began to surge and grow as if they were alive and reaching. This energy was vast potential, an unknown green synergy, and only a moment ago I felt solid like stone, but now I was youthful, mobile, and feeling ever free. What's happening?
Oh, it's all maddening, and that's why I love it. I love new company, because only those who end up here have departed in spite of the greatest risks. From now on, the odds will always be in your favor. When you touch rock bottom, then the only way after this is up. My dear, you're the seer. You've got to visit me if you want real magic to appear. I can see through you, and we're going to kill the rest of your fears. The lesson is about extreme constraint. It's the way diamonds are made. The pressure isn't going to kill you, but there's a reason we call it thrice great,
she said. Why do you live down here? Is it because you can't stay in the world?
Not quite. I'm the savior of lost souls. I'm that girl.
She paused. Now the serpents began to twist and swirl, and she turned to crawl the other way. With all the reasons I had to fear her, something inside me wanted to learn what else she had to say. There's something fascinating about rock bottom. It's when you realize things can't get any worse. What I thought was a terrible circumstance that haunted my life had changed. Maybe blessings can come from a curse.
The poison. What did you get stuck with?
She asked. A snake bite.
Yes, but from who?
She said. Lilith.
No shit. Lilith. Are you aware of her story?
Said Medusa. Not really.
Let me take you to the sacred temple, and then I'll share her allegory,
said Medusa. There I followed her, through all sorts of twists and turns, and by some strange intuitive feeling, I began to find a certain harmony with the poison and how it burned. What used to feel like an onset of death began to fuel me like fire. This was not my ending, and so a metamorphosis was set to transpire.
Do you know what it takes to go from darkness to light?
Asked Medusa. What's that?
To put it simply, we need a bit of cosmic star light. Now come here, beloved. Rest in this temple. If you've suffered this greatly, it's because you are chosen. And so, you are truly a faithful disciple,
said Medusa. There in front of us, I spotted a neatly built stone cathedral that towered around a crystal moat. All sorts of sea lampreys circled the tower, which was quite remote.
Don't get too close to the tower yet. That type of energy could kill you if you're not careful. I'm aligned with a goddess named Kundalini, the Great Mother, and this is her temple,
said Medusa. So what are we doing here?
This is the workstation of miracles. Now Lilith, she's an old friend of mine, and so you mustn't see things stuck in duality like good or bad, black or white, but rather we are all aspects of the divine. If you care to search deep enough, much like your own body and mind are willing to go, and if you go within your own spirit, you discover the same story that is about to unfold. Not too long ago, Earth was a pure and mystical garden. There was peace and harmony that existed upon the entire planet. Not to say there wasn't death, but rather there was a meaningful balance. In this sense, there was an absence of wickedness and madness. Now what changed? And how come the world had to be reframed? That's where Lilith comes in. And so the human book writes that she was banished from the Garden of Eden because she misbehaved,
said Medusa. Well, did she? Her snake bit me after all. Ever since then, I've been cursed by her poison.
Lilith is the guardian of the garden. It is man who made the divine tower fall. The human species got greedy. They wanted something more than peace and clear wisdom. And so they began to hoard the fruit from the Garden of Eden. Animals began to starve, and so much anger broke out. Many species began to fight for their lives so that their own children would have hope. Mankind did not listen to the balance of nature, and so Lilith wasn't waiting for anyone's permission. Her and that great serpent defended the great balance of eternal harmony, and that is why man thinks of her as a demon. Now they call her Eve, but she is Adam's daughter. She's the one who woke up long before the Buddha. Lilith, or Lily, is the Earth's ultimate protector. If Lily's snake has bit you, it's because the world is desperate for the old ways to die. And so what comes next? Now a true king must rise. In order for this to happen, we must consider the value of what is truly right. The birth of creation only occurs because of such darkness and night. Life seems dark, doesn't it? But don't get caught on what has gone wrong. It's not happening to you, it's happening for you. And in time, those weak men of the earth will know it is you who are truly strong. Real kings are not born, they are created through great trials. And many of us guardians have been waiting for a sign to come. And look who arrived. The man with horns. But next you'll need a set of wings. Don't mind the darkness, my dear. Before long, you'll carry the light of the morning star that the dawn brings,
said Medusa. But how? I don't know which way is up, down, in, or out.
Mastering others is strength. Mastering oneself is true power. That's from Lao Tzu,
said Medusa. Great, then this looks to be the place.
Indeed it is. And believe it or not, we have everything we need. Air, earth, water, fire, and a couple leaves,
she said. There is no fire.
Not yet. That's because our alchemical reaction has yet to transpire,
said Medusa. What are you talking about?
We've got to transform your poison, and before long, a lotus will sprout. It's called the elixir of life, but it's going to take a little bit of pressure before that golden life comes out. You see this cavern? It's like an alchemical crucible or flask. You, the air, and whatever elements are in here are like a chemical equation. It's all sealed and trapped. It's fundamental physics. No air or liquid can get out. And I've got just the right solutions to make the perfect combustion come about,
said Medusa. So how do you make the elixir of life?
It's a process of metamorphosis and transformation, which involves a human soul. We take the lead base, which is your basic human nature, then we heat it until the impurities burn away, where the heavy lead of your karma transforms to gold. This process is a healing essence, and so it can be called the Philosopher's Stone,
said Medusa. Yeah, that doesn't quite make sense on how I get free. Do you have any actual advice? Like maybe there's someone who did this process before that could explain it to me.
Have you heard of the Epic of Gilgamesh? He was a man who feared death in his declining years. He was a servant of a great alchemist, which was the seer of his soul, and so he intended on discovering that which makes him immortal. The power of the spirit directed him to find a lotus at the bottom of the sea, but unfortunately, he did not survive to the bottom of the descent to make the discovery,
said Medusa. Which plant is that? What was he after?
It's the blue lotus, but there is only a single one in this entire cavern,
said Medusa. Where is it?
Right here,
she said. But where?
There,
Medusa pointed. I turned around, but there was nothing to see. What are you up to now?
We're going to plant you, much like a tree. The blue lotus is the iris of your eye. It's an aquatic plant of beauty. All we have to do is remove your left eye, and then the blue lotus will bloom rather quickly, she said.
You want my eye?
If not, you may be stuck here until your body dies. We've got to plant that seed, your eye, which is the blue lotus, and that will lead you into the tree of life. First, we need the seed before the journey can take place, she said.
What's the tree of life?
It's the grapevine, and you'll need water and time. And if you plant the seed and follow the intuition, you will discover what the soul is meant to find, said Medusa.
I needed time, and so I felt it was best to take some time upon my own. But after a while, nothing changed, and I felt even more alone. The next time I looked down at my body, I remembered feeling much closer to the ground. And then when I looked up at Medusa, she appeared much larger and even more profound. What's happening to me?
When most people discover the fountain of youth, they're extremely grateful. But since you're submerged in it, it'll affect your body and bones even quicker. If it takes too long, you'll turn back into the seed that you came in as. And once you're that small, you'll transform into one of my sea lampreys, where your life will disappear. Do you see this moat around the sacred temple? Many men and women have tried, but since they did not hold the proper discipline and devotion, they too decreased in their size. There's no fear that you're going to die, but time does matter. Quicker is better than slower, so when you're ready, you'll need to start moving faster,
said Medusa. Okay, well let's go.
Rip out your left eye, then the blue lotus will grow,
she said. What the hell, Medusa? What are you getting at?
This journey is not for the faint of heart. That's why it's rare a soul makes it back,
said Medusa. There must be another way. She paused for a moment, then nodded her head.
There is another way, but it's a long shot. And are you willing to put your life in the hands of another soul? Because if you do, there's a good chance you'll end up dead,
said Medusa. Go on.
You do not realize the power of your own mind. By focusing on the reality you desire, you can create it. Right now, your energy is scattered, but once you learn how to focus and direct it, you are capable of creating miracles,
said Medusa. What kind of miracles?
It's called the hero's journey. You must see that there are no limitations unless you create them yourself. Anything and everything is possible, and so you are only limited by your own imagination, said Medusa.
But tell me about the other way, other than ripping out my left eye.
It's a process of reincarnation. Since the soul lives on other planets and in other dimensions, we continue to enter into the school of life as we learn many lessons. Earth is merely a school, and in this second option, you'll need to send out a sincere prayer. This is a ray of hope, which becomes a signal up to the Earth's surface, where a mortal might receive your message and then decide to take it up for a spiritual adventure,"
she said. "Medusa, I don't think you understand. There's a golden maiden on the surface, and her emotional state is connected to all the land. If I don't get back to the surface and marry her in 7 days, then—"
"Ah yes, December 28th.
said Medusa. "How'd you know?"
So the story goes. Now either give me your eye, wait, and you'll be swimming in the moat, or send a signal to the surface, then pray and hope."
she said. "Well, I'm not giving you my eye,"
"Fine, but we'll need someone's left eye."
she said. "Why?"
"Haven't you heard of the Eye of Horus?"
said Medusa. Now she walked upon the ceiling and moved rather quick. I followed her through the caverns until we reached a dark staircase. "Well, why didn't you say there was a way out?"
"Oh, this goes out, but you won't survive to walk the entire way up. Rather, you've got to convince someone to pull out their eye and then toss it down."
said Medusa. "Why?"
"Because somewhere up there is a brave man, and like you, he's unwilling to let the power of storytelling die. And if he catches on to your mental signal, he'll write a story and call it Life with One Eye,"
said Medusa. "But I don't understand how any of this works."
"Yes, some might call it unfortunate, and for a time it will even hurt. But only tears can bring a dreamer back down to the earth. If you look at the world, we've gotten lost in human ways and laws. While some are trying to be good boys and girls, others are so corrupt they dominate the system while pinning the majority into poverty, and so the tower must fall. We've got to string together a strong message, then send it through the layers of earth in hopes the last buffalo in the park hears your call,"
she said. "A buffalo?"
"You know, there's only one white buffalo left, and if you don't signal this one to answer the call, those humans are going to capitalize on the world until there's nothing left. Animals are going extinct. Wildlife is cut off by roads and highways. December 28th is the point of no return, and so there is a way to find a man who will sacrifice his left eye if things are to change,"
said Medusa. "And what if this doesn't work?"
"Then you'll spend your days fighting against a blessing that you call a curse. For a minute upon the earth will be an eon under the world, and the longer you stay, the younger you will become, until at last you will become so tiny that you'll become unborn,"
said Medusa. "Then let's get to work."
"Oh sure, but I should note, there's a chance you'll go berserk."
said Medusa. "And why's that?"
"Most people cringe when they hear the word shadow work,"
said Medusa. "I'm at the bottom of the below. Let's go,"
"Come to the altar,"
said Medusa. And so I followed her, and there she kept the sea serpents at bay, while I crossed the moat and entered into the base of the sacred tower. There was nothing in here, just a stone table in the very center.
"The idea here is total surrender,"
said Medusa.
"Many people say they can do this, but you'll have to let go of everything. You can't even hold on to your own mind. Do you understand what this means?"
In silence, I told her my answer, because I didn't have a clue what it would take, and the closer I got to the stone altar, the more the poison in me began to tremble and shake. "Do you mind, before we begin, what is your story?"
"My story is a life that no mortal being can fathom or think. But if we had to sum it up in one word, we would call it metamorphosis. I once had a human life, but in that day, there was no such thing as women's rights. I was a beautiful maiden who held a positive role in the world, until a cruel king claimed me and demanded that I would be his wife. Tragedy fell upon me when I was confronted with endless hardships brought upon by male actions, and the more the king abused me, the more I refused to listen. The way I was raised by my father was to honor those who are good and to trust my intuition. But since the king was so cruel, he blamed me because I could never achieve a vaginal orgasm. In truth, I had no love for him, so how could this man make me come? And so I began to plan an escape where I intended to run. Before I could escape, he traded me for a submissive wife. Then he threw me into his jail, and for years I was raped, disgraced. And so I ask, how much do you think one woman could take? But they wouldn't grant me rest. They wouldn't bless me with death. They treated me like the serpents who hid among the brush. They took my clothes, and so every day I had nowhere to go but lie naked upon my chest. I was powerless to fight against an oppressive culture, and they even took it so far to tear apart my family, where they were forced to live poor. And as for the men in my day, as they called me, I was just another whore. But my father was a noble man, and I was not created to dishonor him, and so I did what no mortal would ever think. Since I had nothing left, I began to go inward and experiment. The relative world was before me, but I was trapped behind bars. Gone beyond my own skin and bones, I investigated my spirit and learned how the mind and soul can travel infinitely far. Most people pray to God, since everyone wants to be saved. But God saw what they did to me, and so I even believed God also felt my rage. That's when he sent me a sign. One night a serpent came into my cell that changed my fate. When no one showed me love, when the men of the world cast me into hell as I recycled their hate, I formed a bond with a single serpent, and so I began to worship the snakes. You should know that the only reason men call me a monster is because this image of me has only been passed down through the stories interpreted by the male gaze. But ever since I'd been cast into prison, the snakes would sympathize with me, for they too had been betrayed. I was a human of the earth, much like you. Both of us were pushed to the brink, and so there isn't anything people like us won't do. Night after night, I began to rewire the way of my thinking brain. I worked tirelessly, with each thought as if I wrote my own saga. And even in the horrors of this prison, it was there, when I looked into my only friend's eyes, a serpent, and I remembered how they were once called the Nagas. The Nagas are a divine race of serpents, the ones who live among this underworld. And so I was astonished when after many days and nights, I was sent a sign that the Nagas heard my prayers. For all this time I'd been locked up and abused, but I made friends with a single snake. Now the snake would go out and began to spread the word, and so we would communicate through the vibrations of the mind state. Now how would this happen? Most would think I went mad, for I too thought I'd gone crazy. But then a revelation occurred in ways no one else could understand. Just before dawn, when it was still dark with starlight, the serpent would come visit, and I would gaze endlessly into its eyes. It was trying to teach me how to speak, and so I learned the language of the snakes, for they too had been destroyed by humanity, and so we shared the same connection of rage. As the snake gazed into me, it would teach me by means of a hiss, and so upon one fateful day, I began to picture myself as if I were a snake. There in the serpent's gaze, I pictured my body in scales. I saw myself with green eyes and a pure black body and tail. Once I pictured this, the snake before me dashed away, and as I waited for the next night, I was surprised to find a new snake that had come my way. This was the serpent I pictured, green eyes and a black body, and so again, I used my mental state to picture a new form of a snake that I might embody. This time I pictured a copper snake with poison and venom in its mouth. I pictured it biting the guards who looked over my cage, and so the next night I waited, and it happened exactly the way I had just thought about. As the copper snake bit the guard, he writhed in pain. Then the copper snake came to my cage when I realized The snakes and humans shared life in common. I kissed its forehead, and so again I prayed to the Nagas. As I looked into the brave copper snake's eyes, for a moment I begged that it would poison me so that I too would die. And although it seemed quite willing to accommodate me, there was one more imaginative thought that I had to try. I used the mind to go beyond conventional reality, to enter into that which was imaginary, and so I formed a connection with a snake I pictured as a type of serpent that was not from our galaxy. The snake I envisioned glowed green, and so I crafted its power with my own imagination, as if God constructed humans in a vivid dream. It was upon that day that I discovered the power of inner alchemy. The next day came and went, and I was on my knees praying into the night. There before me, my eyes caught sight of a giant green snake that was glowing bright. It had no body, but its aura asked me for a new vessel. I opened my mouth and allowed this Naga to enter. That night was beyond impossible, because my reality transformed. I had gained the power of the divine serpent, and now I found that through the power of my mind, my entire reality could transform. The next morning, I called the new guard over. Then I peered into his eyes. I pictured him as stone. Then a moment later, he was solidified. Eventually another shift came, and when this guard was supposed to leave, he wouldn't move, and so his friends called his behavior strange. These guards came over, then they peered into my cage. They looked in my eyes, and within an instant they were stone, and so I reached through the cell and took hold of their keys. Upon that day, I transformed 3 humans into stone. I took their keys, and now I was free. My glow was so bright, and that is why they call me a monster. I could not hide, so the soldiers trapped me and cut off my head. But still, the divinity within me could not be overpowered. With my severed head upon the ground, snakes grew from my hair. Then the small serpents climbed my head back up my body. There our form was restored. Now if you do something like that, you'll soon realize that people are not your tribe. All that was left was to run, hide, or slither even deeper inside. I came down here because it's the only place the human man will not go. I was going to die young, but now I will never grow old,
said Medusa. A metamorphosis?
It is in the descent that a curse that hurts becomes the medicine that makes us most alive. Somewhere along the way you were poisoned, but that poison is giving you the strength to survive,
said Medusa. But the signs, how did you align your mind?
Through the eyes. Look into the windows of my soul. Let go of the body, blood, and bones. Enter inward all the way, and there you will discover what goes beyond the unknown. I'm aware of every tragedy upon the earth. My serpents have told me tales of the Trail of Tears. I have felt the worst suffering that man has brought upon the world, and it is the Nagas who ultimately rule over the earth. If people do not learn, the Nagas will cause catastrophes that will ruin the humans' own lives. The animals have tried to teach humanity, but unless something dramatic changes the humans' behavior, then all of humanity will die,
said Medusa. Where must we begin?
We will start with grief. This involves anger, sadness, but eventually it will open the heart space, and there you will rest in peace. Once you look into my eyes, I'm going to take you through what the world did to me. After that, you'll have to decide if you can transmute all that terrible aggression into the pure potential that can set our world free,
said Medusa. But how?
Use that energy to rewrite your soul's truest story. Look at the humans. They are so proud of their ideas that become books and movies, but they have no clue that this earth is a cosmic mind, and their lives are being used for a karmic fee. Any idea that manifests through a book or movie in Hollywood all belong to the earth. These people are simple souls renting bodies so that the universe can bring these ideas forth. Look at technology and cars. Although the ideas took brilliance and hard work, the ideas themselves came from the mind, and the Nagas rule this space, so the mind is invisible by design. Have you ever had a premonition, or a thought that something might occur? Some call it a coincidence, or even a miracle, because how could you explain something so bizarre? But that signal in the brain is like a text message. It's sent to a receiver, and when it's accepted, the message can be implemented or rejected. Have you heard of the screenwriter who had an idea for a movie, but ultimately decided to pass? Then 6 months later, to their surprise, they see that idea has become a movie by someone else, and they cannot imagine how their idea came to manifest. Ideas do not belong to any of us, but rather all ideas are free. All you have to do is pay the karmic toll, but humans do not realize the spiritual debt they owe in fees. Then once they pass on, they get a glimpse of what they owe. Most cannot believe how much spiritual debt they are in, and so they spend eons living the lives of animals while their fellow humans torture, eat, and hunt them so that their karmic conditions can be restored,
said Medusa. So how do I rewrite this story to get someone's left eye?
Yes, that is the way of the wise. I'm going to give you plenty to reflect upon, but you'll need to use it as fuel, not hatred. Rather, it must power the compassionate heart. And if you are able to do that, then a signal will be transmitted upward to the earth. You may even do all this work, but there is one thing not in your control. Your idea for this story must be received and acknowledged by a fellow human soul. For then it is in the hands of a mortal. And so as you endure this metamorphosis, we will wait and pray. We'll be left wondering if the humans will take this idea, create a story called Life with One Eye, and if that happens, then we have hope to survive to the next age,
said Medusa. I'm in. Let's go.
Take off your clothes,
said Medusa. I followed her command. Then I laid down upon the sacred temple's altar. A moment later, her eyes were shut as I was mounted by her. Staring at her eyelids, I watched the snakes in her hair stare into me. I wondered if it would be better to die, or would this set us free? As she opened her gaze, in an instant, I felt more pain than any single creature should ever know. A moment later, it felt as if my heart stopped when I turned to stone.